So I want to give a quick overview of exactly how to get Toad up and running. We've created some scripts that makes getting a Toad deployment up and running from a brand new virtual host installation pretty straightforward, I think. So first we're going to log into our virt host. It's a brand new installation running CentOS 7. I've never logged into this machine yet. There's no updates been done to it. It's really just a straight up deployment from an ISO file. I deployed it via USB key. So let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is actually run our installation. This will be done via two scripts. The first one's going to be a bootstrap script, and then we'll actually run a deployment script. So the first thing the bootstrap's going to do is run an update on the machine, make sure that all the RPMs are up to date, install any dependencies, add the Toad user, and really just get the system up and running and ready to go. So we can do this via a curl command that we've provided. The script can also be just downloaded from the repository github.com/redhat-nfepe/toad. I'm going to actually pump this into the time command. I'll pause in between because there's obviously a bunch of yum updates that need to happen here, and we don't need to record that in the recording. But I will run it through time so that when I come back after the pause, we'll see how long the commands take and how quickly we can really get an environment up and running from scratch. So here we go. So that's the script, and all we want to do is pump it into shell so that we can run it. And now that things are running, I'll give it a quick pause and I'll come back when it completes. So our bootstrap has completed. Took about 4 minutes or so. Just for reference, for the updates on my network, downloads were happening at about 3 megabytes a second, and I am using an SSD drive on this virt host, so writing should be relatively fast. So before we move on to the deployment, I wanted to show you how an all-in-one installation works and what it looks like. So let's load up a browser and look at the documentation real quick. So we can look at toad.rtdfd.io. That'll get you to our generated documentation. Under the Quickstart here. So this is the image I wanted to show. So everything in the gray box, this is our virtualization host. This is a single bare metal machine that is going to run the Jenkins master, and it's also going to act as the Jenkins slave itself so that you can run Quickstart and deploy your undercloud and overcloud all on the same machine. So with Toad, what we're going to do is when we do our deployment, what we're actually going to be deploying is this Jenkins master, and it's going to run as a Docker container, and then we're going to SSH into that and run an Ansible playbook against it in order to get it all configured. I know this isn't really the Docker way, but it's just the way that we've made it operate for now, because this Jenkins master could actually run as a virtual machine or a bare metal machine somewhere else in your network. In this case, we're just using Docker in order to keep things nice and lightweight. So now that we've looked at that, let's actually run our deployment command and get our Jenkins master up and running. And this will also configure the virtualization host as the slave and bind it into the Jenkins master itself. So we need to first su into the Toad user. And now we can run our curl command. And again, we'll run this into a time so that we can see how long it takes once I pause the recording. And we'll pump that into shell, and we'll get started. I'll be right back. So we're back after installation. We've got the Jenkins master, we've got the slave, everything came up in orderly fashion. Took about 6 minutes or so to get all that going. Not too bad, I don't think. So we can take a check and see what containers we have running. So we've got our Jenkins master, and we've got something called traffic, which is a proxy. so that we can expose ports to our services like Kibana and Jenkins Master through this proxy, and only have to expose ports on the vert host to a single container. So what that means is we do have to access these via a host name, and so we're not going to set up DNS and do all that fancy stuff here. Really, I'm just going to override it in my host file. And so by default, the domain name is configured in toad under the .env file. So the proxy domain is toad.tld. And if you look at the Docker compose file, we can see here we have these front-end rules. And really, it's just appending Kibana.proxy domain here, and then under the Jenkins master, same thing here, jenkins.toad.tld in this case. So if we look at a host file, this is what my host file looks like. It points to the IP address of the virtualization host, and I've simply added kibana.toad.tld and jenkins.toad.tld. So if I want to actually load up the interface, I can do that via HTTP jenkins.toad.tld, and that takes me into Jenkins. I can log in. The default login is admin. We can see our master. We can see our slave is online. And so we've got our jobs down here, and these are all pre-populated via some Git repositories. I'll go into some of that into another screencast, but you can see all the job definitions, all that, under our GitHub repository. So that's at github.com/redhat-nfepe. And then there's a Jenkins-jobs folder there, and there's a couple other repositories where all this stuff gets defined. And so if I want to do a deployment, let's say I want to do a virtualization deployment on this slave using Newton, I could click on this job here, and I could click on Build Now, and that would trigger my job, and that's it.